happy Tuesday, August 1st, 2023, and welcome to a brand new month edition of what I like to call the Isolation Cabin. I am your host, the vegan you believe in, Kurt Cadet, aka Conscious Kurt, in the flesh as always. And here on the Isolation Cabin, I like to talk about the different forms isolation takes on, whether positive or negative, the effects it has on us and our mental health, and what we can do to have a better understanding of it, to have a better quality of our lives going forward. Now, several months ago, I would say around Valentine's Day time, I did an episode on this podcast about how people sabotage themselves and isolate themselves from potential good relationships and potential good partners. And I want to further elaborate on that topic today as I get into what I think, from what I can see, keeps men and women the most isolated and the most lonely these days the most. And that one thing is constantly treating each other like the enemy. I don't think in my entire life I've seen the divide between men and women as bad and in some ways downright ugly as it's become in the last few years. Yeah, because when I hear certain men talk and certain women talk, I just say to myself, it's clear this person really just hates men or hates women. I know all of us have bad experiences throughout our dating life that maybe scarred us and maybe traumatized us in some ways and I guess made us less willing to trust. But as I mentioned in my episode last week, when you group up every single last person of a single sex as all being the same and saying they all suck, they're all bad, they're all out to get you, not only are you sabotaging yourself by doing that, you are also putting labels on people that you do not even know. That piece of shit guy you dated or that grimy ass chick you dated, they do not speak for every man and every woman all across the world. They are their own separate person. What they did to you is fucked up, admittedly. You have the right to not like them, but to group every single man as being the same and every single woman as being the same and having nothing but negative and condescending things to say about them, that is some toxic ass shit. And if nobody told you that before, I am going to tell you that today. Because it's coming to the point now where men and women are searching not so much for a partner, but more so for a competitor and somebody to compete with. Like, oh, I make more money than you. Oh, I'm smarter than you. Oh, I do more around the house than you. Oh, I'm a better fuck than you, etc., etc., etc. It just seems like it's all about competing with each other, outdoing each other, trying to look better than the other. When in all honesty, y'all should be working together. Y'all should be looking for ways to serve each other and also, more than anything else, have less of a me attitude and more of a we attitude. So what has caused this extreme divide we've been seeing in recent years between men and women? What has caused it to get as crazy and out of control as it's gotten? I think a big reason that it's gotten to this point is because of unrealistic expectations. And if you're a man who thinks women are only guilty of this and vice versa, that's where the problem is. Because all of you are guilty of this shit. Women demanding a man who's tall, dark, and handsome, makes 6 figures a year, and takes her to trips to Paris every month or whatever. That all sounds well and good and all, but realistically, how many dudes like that exist in the world? And also on the flip side, dudes who expect a woman to be like a Victoria's Secret model, who fucks like a porn star, who cooks for them, cleans for them, waits on them hand and foot and all that jazz, and is a traditional woman. That also sounds well and good, but realistically, how many women like that exist in the world that you'll find? And look, it's okay to have preferences, and it's okay to have like certain things that you look for in a partner. That's all well and good. But you need to be realistic about those expectations and what you're looking for. Because the chances of you finding those type of people I just described a few minutes ago, they are very, very slim. And by holding your expectations to that point and refusing to not even budge a little bit on it is going to keep you realistically probably lonely, single, and in many cases miserable for a very long time. And also this plays into the whole thing of not knowing the difference between standards and preferences. Because wanting a partner that's loyal, that's kind, who does right by you, and who you have a connection with, that's a standard. Wanting a partner who makes this amount of money a year, who takes you to all these crazy places, who fucks like a porn star, who waits on you hand and foot, that is a preference. And it's okay to have preferences, that's fine. But when you get preferences mixed up with standards, you're setting yourself up for a loss. A huge, gigantic loss. And you can have those unrealistic expectations all you want. You can hold on to them as tightly as you can. But the longer you do, chances are the more opportunities you're probably going to miss out on. A lot of good ones at that. And another thing I feel that has caused this divide to get so out of hand in recent years is many men and also many women being on a crazy ass ego trip. The ego trips that I've talked about so many times on this podcast. I really cannot stand it. It is such a turnoff. It is so freaking annoying, and it just reeks of insecurity. And I've said before, it's okay to have a high opinion of yourself and be confident and like yourself. That's all well and good. But when it gets to the point where you think that your shit doesn't stink and that you look down on everybody and look at everybody else as beneath you and act like you never mess up and never do anything wrong, then the biggest thing you are going to accomplish is chasing people away. And you're chasing away a lot of good potential partners who could actually add value to your life and make it better in a lot of ways. But when you have a crazy ass inflated ego and you're overly obsessed with yourself and think the whole world revolves around you, then honestly, you have no business being in a relationship. And the biggest reason why is because that kind of attitude and mentality shows that you are selfish and you are only about yourself. And relationships should be a team, should be a partnership. It should be about both of you doing for each other, not one person just doing everything for the other person and the other person just reaping all the benefits. That shit is whack sauce. And as I've said on this podcast before about many things, and I'll say again, that shit is for the birds. And until a lot of men and a lot of women check their egos at the door and realize that not everything is about them, then chances are they're not going to make any real progress in their love lives. And also another thing that I feel like has caused this divide so much and it's gotten as bad as it has recently is because of a lack of a willing to change. A lot of people can be very stubborn and very set in their ways to the point where they are unwilling to ever compromise and unwilling to ever work on the issues that cause them to be the way they are. And what I've seen a lot lately with this whole divide with men and women is exactly that, a lack of willing to compromise. I just notice a real my way or the highway attitude where they're not willing to change for the other person, but the other person has to change for them, and they're super obsessed with gender roles, what a man should do, what a woman should do, and they will not budge on that for anything. And that's the thing that costs a lot of people relationships and also a lot of opportunities in life in general. It's just a lack of willing to change, a lack of willing to adapt your behavior, adapt your habits, and adapt the things you do every day. Either because you're too stubborn, you're too proud, or you're just too selfish. And that's basically what it comes down to these days. It's just being too selfish and just too much about yourself. And the less you're willing to change, the less you're willing to work on your issues, and the less you're willing to at least compromise a little bit, the more good opportunities and the more good potential partners you are going to see disappear. Because someone who's that unreasonable and that set in their ways, honestly just isn't worth the headache. So what can we do as men and women to stop this divide and come together more and be more understanding towards each other? Well, one of the main things I think both men and women need to do is get out of their own way. That's right, I said it. Get out of your own damn way. Because piggybacking to my point a few minutes ago about a lack of a willing to change, not just in relationships, but just in life in general, the people who I've noticed who have been the most successful and who have gone the farthest are people who are willing to get out of their own way be willing to compromise, and also get out of their comfort zone. And when you're so unwilling to change and so set in your ways and so damn stubborn and unreasonable, that's exactly the place that you are living in. The comfort zone. And when you live in that comfort zone, that zone is as far as you are going to go. But if you can step out of that comfort zone, maybe be willing to change your thinking, change your actions, and change your way you go about things, then maybe you might see different results. And maybe those changes can result in you finding a potential partner who you have a long and good, healthy relationship with. But the only way you'll probably see that is if you have a willingness to change. Because I heard a quote that a person who views the world at 50 years old the same way they do at 20 years old wasted 30 years of their life. And if you're somebody who won't compromise for shit, who won't change for shit, even if it would be good for them and benefit them, then when you wake up one day and notice that your life is exactly the same and maybe in some ways it didn't turn out the way you wanted, you can thank your stubborn ass behavior for that. So that's why I say, if you're willing to get out of your own way, change your thinking, and maybe compromise some of your preferences a little bit, you'd be surprised at how many options can open up for you. Another way us men and women can come together more and be less divisive is just being more open-minded. People will have these lists a mile long of everything they look for in a partner and everything they want in a partner. And more than anything, they're just super selective in who they choose to date. And hey, it's okay to be selective to a degree, and it's okay to have certain things that you look for. But there's a difference between that and being just super picky, super nitpicky, and not be willing to give somebody a chance just because they don't meet your quote-unquote standards. But if you have more of an open mind and are willing to at least give somebody a chance before you write them off, they could surprise you. They could really end up surprising you. You guys could end up hitting it off. You guys could end up having fun together. And who knows, it could turn into like a marriage where you have a bunch of kids and live happily ever after. You never know. But you have to have an open mind. Don't be so quick to write off people and not be willing to give them a chance just because you have this whole set idea of the person you want to be with. No matter how much you fantasize about it, no matter how much you build it up in your head, it's never going to be 100% the way that you imagine it. And if you're at least willing to date someone and give them a chance before you come up with the conclusion that they're not for you, then maybe you'll actually have more fun in your life. And maybe you'll actually get to go on dates and actually get to know someone, as opposed to holding back from it just because you don't want to let go of your little standards. If there's enough about the person that you like, be at least willing to give them a chance. Be at least open-minded about going out with them or at least talking to them before you come up with the conclusion that they're the wrong person for you. One last thing that could help both men and women come together and be less divisive is taking each other as we are. At the end of the day, none of us are perfect. None of us have it all together. And all of us have some shit about us that we need to work on. And what we need when we're going through that process is someone who will love and accept us despite those flaws that we have. And I get that certain flaws and certain issues are deal breakers, and that's fair. But there are other flaws that, granted, you might not be crazy about, but it would be a damn shame to miss out on a potential good relationship just because you can't get past that, when it's something that in many cases probably isn't as big of a deal as you make it out to be in your own head. Yeah, because that's what healthy relationships I've learned throughout my life are all about, is accepting everybody for the things you like about them and also for the things that you don't like about them. And while you may write somebody off for their flaws and for their issues, you have to understand that your ass isn't perfect either. You also have issues that in many ways are a turn off and that also scare and chase people away. And if you would want somebody to still love you and accept you despite those issues you have, you should be willing to do the same for somebody else as well. And if you're not, that really says a lot about you. Because sadly, a lot of people refuse to change and don't want to change, but yet they want the perfect and completed version of someone else. Well, guess what? I have news for you. That shit does not exist. No matter how together it seems that somebody has and how perfect they may look on paper, everybody has at least one thing about them that is off. And depending on what that thing is, learning how to accept that person for those flaws and work past it is what will make the difference between happily ever after and old and alone. Because that's the thing. I feel as men and women, we try so hard to change each other and mold each other into what we want our potential partner to be, without realizing that who they are, for the good and the bad, is what makes them stand out and what makes them special, and in many ways what made you drawn to them in the first place. But my final thoughts on this whole men versus women divide is that we all need to stop acting and going out of our way to prove how much we don't need each other. Because it's okay to be independent, it's okay to be self-reliant and all that, but you are fooling yourself if you really think that a potential partner who you connect with, have fun with, and who you can talk to and confide to about anything isn't worth having. If you honestly think that, then that is one sad-ass way to live. I'm just so tired of all this bickering, all this arguing, and all this back and forth bullshit saying, all men ain't shit, all women ain't shit, meh, 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 meh. Cut that shit out already. Because like I said before, at the beginning of this podcast, y'all need to stop treating each other like the enemy. Because the more y'all treat each other like the enemy and treat each other like the competition, then the further divided y'all are going to be, and the more lonely and unhappy you're going to be in the long run. Because being so obsessed with outdoing each other and making the other look bad while you make yourself look good is nowheresville. That's right, I said it. It is nowheresville. And that's not a place that I want to go, and I sincerely hope that that's not a place that you want to go either. Because there is no fun to be had there. So I'm urging you guys, if you don't want to be a part of the problem, please become part of the solution. Please, when it comes to significant others and finding a partner, adopt a we mentality and reject the me mentality. Your potential partner should not be your competition, should not be someone you're trying to outdo. They should be somebody that is your partner, your better half, and more than anything, your best friend. So please stop being so damn stubborn, stop being so damn stuck in your ways, and compromise. Find common ground. Find an understanding. Because if we both focus on that and see how we can come together as opposed to being driven further apart, then maybe the outcomes we get in the relationships in our real lives will be 10 times better than the ones we fantasize about. Well, that's all the time I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. And like I've said before, I'm not a licensed doctor or therapist, but I do have a lot of experience in my personal life going through these issues. And I like to use this podcast as a platform to help people get through these issues a lot easier than I did. And if you ever want to link up and connect with me, follow me on my various social media sites, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Look up my first and last name, Kirk Cadet. Also, if you want to listen to this podcast or any of the episodes from the past, you can find it on Spotify, Spreaker, as well as YouTube. Leave a comment on any of the episodes and let me know what you like about them or don't like about them. And for a long time to come, I will be here talking about the issue of isolation, the good and bad that comes from it, and what we can do to have a better understanding of it, to have a better quality of our lives in the future. So until next time, this is Kirk Cadet for another edition of the Isolation Cabin. Hope you guys have a good week. God bless. Don't fall into the divide and conquer bullshit, especially when it comes to men and women, because that shit is for the birds. See you guys next week.